Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Hadfield. My company is Flowwater Technologies. We're a small ballast water manufacturer based in Limassol, but with a global reach. I originally wrote a presentation around could a ballast water management system give an owner payback? It's a fair question to ask, as there's so many environmental topics on the table right now, and the manufacturers involved in these subjects are all promoting payback. Scrubbers offer payback. LPG conversions, we've all heard, offer payback. Anti-fouling paints, changes of propellers, all of these items of great expense with environmental issues, and they all offer payback. So why not a ballast water system? The last time I spoke to an audience, I've got to make some apologies here, Apostolos. I used the comments, buying a ballast water system was like buying a coffin. And that was the wrong thing to say, because everyone's embracing these environmental issues now, so I promise I'm not going to mention coffins again. But I want to take a lead from some of the people that I met last night at the presentation and the awards. Persevering was comments that were passed, and I'm sure in the ballast water world we've all had to persevere. And also thinking outside of the box. 7 years ago, I proposed an idea to a very well-known and respected engineer, Eddie Bucknell. I wasn't to know that single-handedly, Eddie had almost stopped the ballast water convention, and boy oh boy was I in for a bath of fire. But instead of giving up on my idea, I continued to talk to chief engineers around Limassol, technical directors and ship owners. And there was a general pattern to the answers that was full of, they don't want. Their don't wants, ironically, never included that they never wanted a ballast water convention, but more technical drawbacks on how a vessel would operate under this legislation. Armed with what I believe to be a good idea, I married up the list of don'ts with the concept and built my first test rig. And I don't mean a small unit, I mean something that was similar in size to what we're going through for land-based and US Coast Guard testing facilities. I invited back all the engineers and owners to see what I built. For some, I had erased their don'ts off their don't list, and for others, well, let's just say you can't satisfy everybody. But the one person I valued, Eddie, he didn't come up to see me. This led further to investigation in how we could improve what we'd done before and move to the next stage. Now, last night, two people mentioned that if you don't educate yourself, you don't see future opportunities. And this is where I probably took the biggest gamble of my life. I looked up all the coming future IMO regulations and everything that could have an environmental impact, especially on what could be done with ballast water systems. You must be thinking, what's this guy talking about? Well, 2020 low sulfur is what I'm referring to. And why would this have an effect on ballast water? Well, simply the answer is almost all of the systems with type approval today use masses of energy. So just imagine if the convention was to ratify and then to impose a legislation that says you have to be more energy efficient, or to be more precise, clean emissions in port, where you use a ballast water system. Basically, it's a total contradiction. At this point, I had a concept using two methods of treatment. The first using electrochlorination, and the second using field wave technology. The idea being that we'd make a sodium hypochlorite solution and inject it when it was needed on ballast, and instead of filtration, the field wave technology would have effect on larger invasive species and assist with the chlorine. This wasn't new technology by no means, but it was new to the ballast water world. We were also at the time conducting tests on wastewater treatment, and luckily enough, we caught a lucky break. In wastewater, there's an issue with aluminium silicates, and waste companies were desperate for a solution. Now please stay with me on this one. It's late, we've had a nice lunch, everyone's feeling tired, and half the audience has gone as well. Aluminium silicates are cat fines to you guys, and you will now get more cat fines with low sulfur fuel. Now 2020 is starting to make sense if you want to focus or gamble, as we did, on a legislation affecting another one. However, our gamble went in a slightly different direction than we planned. We tested an offshoot of our ballast water management system on a fuel line to see how it would affect the cat fines, and the results were fantastic. In fact, the results were almost too good. We didn't just have a positive effect on cat fines in the cylinders, but we also found out we saved fuel too. Thankfully for Flowwater, that gamble paid off. Ratification of the Ballast Water Convention and the 2020 sulphur cap have come around. There are of course a lot of work behind this, with academics qualifying our work and sea trials confirming the results in the real world. But now we had to put our money where our mouth was, and it was time to start the US Coast Guard type approval. This too was another gamble in some eyes, but I like to call it a well-studied guess. The original IMO approval was criticised by some for having holes in it. Now, I make myself clear, I do not mock the original type approval process, because like some rules, someone will always try and find a way around it, and manufacturers did. They could get a type approval and then end up on a ship not working. So we decided that once the US Coast Guard had finalised their position on testing, we could go to US Coast Guard approval first, with a wish that the proposed new IMO guidelines would be introduced in our approval process, and they were. So to recap, Flowwater Technologies wanted to type approve their ballast water treatment system under stricter guidelines than they needed to do at first, and to incorporate a technology that had nothing to do with ballast water, but would be further helping the environment. What was it someone said last night about doing something worthwhile? It has to be difficult, or it's not worthwhile doing it at all. In June 2018, Flowwater Technologies Limited filed its application to the US Coast Guard under the STEPS programme and started to do the US Coast Guard type approval process. For all you non-scientist people out there, the approval process is absolutely fascinating when you get to understand the science behind it. And this is where the new benchmark of standards comes in. There are 16 approved US Coast Guard type of systems and lots more with existing IMO approval. It does question the capabilities of some companies when they don't apply for our highest standard, and you, the ship owners, should be paying close attention to this. The reason is that these systems will have to renew their IMO approval to the new revised standards, and if they don't, it will have repercussions on you using that system depending when it was installed and when it will be installed. Don't forget that the ship owners have recently pushed through commissioning of systems by independent authorities when they're installed to ensure they work. That makes it harder for the manufacturers. Trust me, the new revised IMO guidelines are fantastic for you as a ship owner. The testing is so robust with new measurements for upper and lower limits, greater toxicity checks, and above all, no bending the rules for the manufacturers. Under the guidance of Lloyd's, Flowwater has tested at Neva Laboratories in Norway and DHI in Denmark to US Coast Guard standards and the revised IMO G9. The system uses no filtration on the ballast line so that it can fit into the tightest of spaces. The sodium hypochlorite production is environmentally controlled without going into too much detail, so that it can produce a concentrated liquid without any organic load affecting the solution, and it can even be produced while sailing in salt-free water. And I did say salt-free water. There's no salinity restrictions with our system. The technology used to avoid filtration is quite unique, and it's also deployed to the fuel lines, assisting with the cat fines, but more importantly, it saves fuel. More fuel than the system needs in fuel energy conversion, therefore it is now offset carbon neutral. Eddie Bucknell finally did come back to my factory, and he told me to get on and do my type approval. And sorry if I sound emotional, but that was a big moment for me in our history. Anyway, it saves fuel. So therefore, I have now presented to you a ballast water system that can actually offer payback to an owner. I've added two final slides, and it looks like I'm going to be ahead of time as well here, but I added two final slides after last night's presentations, listening to some very well-respected people within the industry. I wanted to be a leader with a carbon-neutral ballast water system, and I'm hoping we are going to be. But more importantly, I needed a team behind me, and I thank that team for everything they've done for me. Ladies and gentlemen, a ballast water system with payback.